The Shift is brought to you by SE Healthcare. Welcome to The Shift. I'm Dr. Andrea Coyle. Hello, everyone. Dr. Andrea Coyle here, back for another great episode of the Shift podcast. And as you know, the Shift podcast is really how we want to change the narrative, shine the light on all the great that's happening in nursing, and talk about what a shift is. A shift is a change in direction, a change in mindset, a change in tendency and frequency. And I'm really thrilled today to introduce someone who's definitely been a shifty. They've shifted in their career multiple times. And I'm going to introduce Dr. Spratling. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you in this space. I know we've talked previously and have a lot of common interests and ideas. So I'm really excited to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you here, and I'm sure the shifties are as well. Can you just kind of briefly tell us your career, where you've gone in your career, different things you've done, and then we're going to focus in on one of the biggest shifts in your career and what that meant to you.
Okay, absolutely. Well, let me start with, I am currently the immediate past president of the National Association of Pediatric Nurse Practitioners. We have about 8,000 members across the country, and our focus is really pediatric healthcare and child health. So it's not only pediatric nurse practitioners, it's also family nurse practitioners, psychiatric mental health nurse practitioners, and other disciplines that are interested in child health. So it was such an honor to be elected and to serve as president for the last year. And I recently became immediate past president, so I'll be on the board for another year. I am also a professor at Georgia State University, and I have been at Georgia State University for 12 years. I am a researcher. I currently teach primarily in the PhD program, and I also mentor DNP students, PhD students, and faculty. As far as my career, I started out like everyone did, trying to get into nursing school. The challenges of getting those prerequisites done and applying to programs. Went to nursing school, got my bachelor's degree, and that was from Mercer University. And then I worked in an intensive care unit, a pediatric intensive care unit, technology dependent care unit specifically, and worked as a staff nurse for a few years and loved it. I loved being at the bedside, but thought maybe I should go back to school. So I decided to go back to school and get my master's and become a pediatric nurse practitioner. And then when I graduated from that program, I did work as a pediatric nurse practitioner in a pulmonary practice. And that was before there was acute and primary care. I kind of did a little bit of both, at that time. And then I decided, well, maybe I wanted to do something else. So I started thinking about getting a doctoral degree. I started thinking about other opportunities. And to be honest, I applied to an academic position at a university. And there are universities that still hire those with a master's degree. And especially at that time, that was incredibly common. So I applied thinking they might hire me as a clinical instructor or something of that nature. And they hired me as a full-time faculty. And of course, asked me to go back and get my doctoral degree. So during that time, I was teaching undergraduate and graduate, and then also working on my PhD. And so after I finished my PhD, I had an opportunity to come to my current university and focus on research. And so that is where I've been since. And then over my time in academia, I have served in various administrative positions. I was in administration for a little over 10 years. I directed an undergraduate program. I was a track coordinator for a pediatric nurse practitioner program. I was PhD director. I was the associate dean and chief academic officer for a school of nursing, so the head of a school of nursing. And for the last couple of years, I have returned to this faculty role. And then I also had this amazing opportunity to run for a national office for NAPNAP, which is the Pediatric Nurse Practitioner Organization.
Wow. So I'm sure all the shifties out there are going to agree that you've had multiple shifts in your nursing career, which is I believe the beauty of why nursing is the best profession. There's just so many endless opportunities that we as nurses can do to make a difference in society. I want to go back to your first shift that I heard, pediatric ICU, and then you decided you wanted to go back to school. What would you tell some of the shifties out there that are considering going back to school? What drove you to make the change? And then how was that shift? Give us a couple nuggets on what was really important and lessons learned from that very first shift.
Oh gosh, great question. Well, I've always enjoyed learning, but I also knew at that time how difficult nursing school could be at any level. But I really wanted to do something different, or even if I didn't actually want to do something different and leave the bedside, I wanted the opportunity. And so that's the whole thing with getting your education. It opens up those doors. You can stay in your current position if you wish to, or maybe 5 or 10 years down the road, you decide you want to do something different. So that's really what I wanted, those doors to be open, and I wanted those opportunities. And I do encourage nurses, nurse practitioners, those in nursing, to explore those different career opportunities. Talk to others who are maybe in those positions, and what are the pros and the cons of those positions. But really, that spirit of inquiry, kind of thinking about what you might want to do, maybe not right now, but in the future. And then those studies can really prepare you for that next step whenever you're ready for the next step.
Do you think, and this is going off script a little, but that's what's going to make it fun. Do you think there's a big opportunity? I look back, honestly, Regena, when I was a new nurse, and I wish my first 2 years of nursing, I would have known more about the opportunities. And I graduated 30 years ago. Do you think we do a better job today in highlighting, promoting, focusing on all these great opportunities that are in the nursing profession? Or do you think we're so laser focused on getting people in that direct care delivery that we've lost sight of all the opportunities? And there's no right or wrong answer. And I kind of put you on the spot, but as you're talking, I'm like, oh, I have more questions for you.
No, absolutely. Well, I would say yes and no. I mean, I think the students are fiercely focused on graduating and becoming a nurse. However, I think they're also interested in the next step. And I think that this current generation of nurses are already thinking about, what is that next step? Maybe I do want to become a nurse practitioner. Maybe I want to have another role in nursing. So I think we have students now that are thinking about it. And I think it's in the curriculum now. I think it's in the textbooks. I think there are courses that look at the different roles. So I think they learn before they leave the program what those opportunities might be. Whereas those of our generation, there really wasn't much of a focus on it at that time.
I agree with that. And do you think a big takeaway for our listeners, for our shifties, is, and you said it, and I always say, I'm a lifelong learner. Do you think that's a nugget, no matter where you are in your career? It's so important, whether you're an ICU nurse, an emergency room nurse, an operating room nurse, a nurse navigator. Is that one thing that you would tell the shifties to just always remain in the game, in the nursing game, and just continue to be a ravenous reader and take on all these opportunities to learn?
Absolutely. I say yes, that lifelong learning and learning what you want to learn about. I mean, I think if you're in a healthcare setting, you often have those annual competencies. As an RN, you have to do continuing education. But what is your interest? Find articles that interest you. Find other people in the nursing community, reach out to someone like me. I mean, people email me and say, can we meet? Can we talk about my career? I actually had a meeting yesterday with was just a lovely pediatric ICU nurse that just wanted to talk about what are some career options, what are some educational options. So again, expand your horizons beyond your workplace. And I think that's what makes nursing so satisfying. I mean, we have that our duties and responsibilities and that work that we do within that workspace or work setting. But then what are some other things that you're interested in? You might be in a pediatric setting, which is typically my case, but then you might be interested in maternal child health, or there may be something going on in the adult specialties that apply to what's going on in another specialty. So really expand your horizons and find things that interest you, and also find others that share your interest. And I think that's where professional organizations are so important. I think getting to know colleagues, not necessarily in your unit, but in other units or maybe at other hospitals. So kind of find your network.
The Shift is brought to you by SE Healthcare. Is burnout costing your organization its best nurses? How do you know? SE Healthcare can help. Our evidence-based approach helps nurse leaders boost retention, enhance job satisfaction, and bring joy back into our great profession. In addition, it helps elevate quality patient care, because when the people taking care of the people are at their best, patients get the care they deserve. We can reduce burnout by an impressive 50%. Are you ready to uncover burnout's impact on your team? Visit sehealthcaresolutions.com, The Shift, for your free assessment today. I think that's a really good point. You just made me think of something. I think part of this podcast, and I hope this works, is number one, that's why we met out in Denver at the NAP conference. And then I reached out to you, and I think that's what's so beautiful about the nursing community. Our community stretches across the globe. And I think when my younger nursing career, I wouldn't have had the confidence to reach out to Dr. Regena Spratling or, Dr. Deb Zimmerman, who kicked off our launch. And that being said, I think our community needs to open up to our newer nurses. And maybe we take the step as the more seasoned, we'll call ourselves seasoned, not old, the more seasoned, experienced nurses, and be that mentor, be that guide, be that person for our younger nurses. Because, as I said, our nursing careers are incredible, and we literally can change the world. We can change the world. So we just have this great community, and I'm glad to be in this community with you. You said something else when you went from administration to being a professor. So that was yet another shift in your career. What kind of triggered that? What made the shift?
Well, it was a combination of things, and I don't know if I could put my finger on an exact thing, but it was a combination of personal, professional, physical health. I mean, there was just a variety of issues, and it was time to make a change. And I knew that, and it was hard. It's hard. Anytime you make a shift, it's hard, but it's kind of what's next. I am one of those that perceive things as not an ending, but a beginning to that next step. Right. So I did step out of a leadership position, and from there resumed teaching and research and things that I was already doing, but things that I could totally immerse myself in and focus on, and kind of what do I like to do and what can I contribute to my workplace, to my colleagues, to my students, to my profession. So I kind of shifted to what was important to me and what contributions I could make. And amazingly, at that same time point, I mean, literally within weeks, a colleague of mine who's just absolutely lovely called me and asked me if I would ever consider running for president of the National Association of Pediatric Nurse Practitioners. You've been on the board previously, and we know how active you are in the profession, and would you consider? And I said, yes. That's the other thing. And when you're in midst of a shift, think about saying yes instead of saying no. So I said, yes, I'll think about it. And then we talked in a few weeks, and I ran for president. I never imagined being elected. I literally did not think I was going to be elected, but it was it allowed me to shift away from something I had been doing and move that energy into something else. And then I knew that even if I wasn't elected, it would open other doors. So it really helped me make that smooth transition or a smooth shift from something I had been doing for almost a decade, and kind of moving away from some of that leadership and management and dealing with faculty and students and staff into really shifting to some of my career interest and really leadership at a national level. So it was great. It was perfect timing. I couldn't have asked for better timing.
That's a great story. Now, you did say something. I heard you say, and I'm paraphrasing, it was time to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what the indicators were that you knew it was time to make a change. But I'm going to share a story when I knew it was time to make a change. I started off my career at the Cleveland Clinic, and I was a medical surgical nurse. And I have a wonderful friend who to this day is still my friend. Her daughter's getting married. She invited me. I want to shout out to Dr. Lydia Russo from the Cleveland Clinic. She's a nurse practitioner. She is such a great friend and such a great colleague. She had recognized that day after day for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, I was coming to work and I was really very cynical and critical. And I was getting in the Pyxis to start wound care. And she said to me, Andrea, I think you need to make a change. You are miserable here. And to this day, I remember exactly what I was doing. And it kind of stung me. But I have to tell you, her ability to have that courageous, really thoughtful, purposeful conversation with me shifted me to look for other options. And I started looking for other options. I went from the medical surgical unit to a surgical intensive care unit. And then I started looking at schools to go back to get into school. So it was one person who was brave enough to say to me, ooh, what's going on here? Like she recognized, and I don't want to talk about burnout so much, but what she was recognizing is that I was burning out. And I didn't know it 30 some years ago. So what was the change? Did someone bring something to your attention, or did you just recognize that within yourself that it was time for a change?
I would say both. I mean, I could just feel myself losing direction, losing heart, losing passion, and I'm sure it was showing. I mean, I'm sure others recognized it too. And I was also feeling physical symptoms and mental symptoms and just I didn't have the energy to do what I needed to do. But you keep pushing forward. I mean, and I look back a couple years and I say, well, now I can see things, but you don't see it when it's happening. But I do think you feel a difference. You feel like in the back of your mind, it's there that there's got to be a change. Like there's something, this isn't working, whether it's your behavior, your attitude, your mindset, your performance. I mean, there's just kind of that lull that happens, and you don't know it when you're in it sometimes. But trying to have that self-awareness and self-reflection and acknowledging your feelings, and acknowledging what you're experiencing. So I think that's something we need to help our fellow nurses to recognize. And it's amazing that you had a colleague that saw it in you and was brave and bold enough to say something. I think sometimes we do recognize it in others before we recognize it in ourselves, and just having the courage to speak to each other. I think that's something we need to be doing in nursing, right?
I think we need to have a whole nother podcast episode that you and I discuss that. It is so important. Yes, I have to tell you, when you're younger, sometimes it's hard to take a look in the mirror and say, what role am I playing in this?
Mm-hmm.
So would you be amenable to come back and let's do a whole nother podcast on identifying yourself, signs and symptoms in yourself and others, and how we can help people with that?
Absolutely. I was going to say it's not my expertise, but I guess being in nursing for a couple of decades and having these shifts in my career, but absolutely, I would love to come back. And if you haven't noticed, I have the gift of gab, as we say. So I love to talk and I love nursing. I have never regretted my career in nursing and all the changes that I've made in my career over the years. It's really, it is one of the few professions that I think you can do this. I mean, even I've been in pediatrics for a long time. I would say I'm probably going to stay in pediatrics, but if I wanted to do something different, I could. There's no one that tells me I can't. I mean, I go back and work in a different area of the hospital. I'm an RN. If I want to do another type of nurse practitioner, I can do a postmaster certificate. We have so many options as nurses. And so really seize those opportunities and consider those opportunities, right? Because we have, that's the luxury of our profession.
Oh, I love that. It's almost like a drop the mic. You almost dropped the mic, but we're not going to drop the mic yet. As we wrap this up, let's share a couple of golden nuggets or takeaways with our shifties. So I'll let you, during all the shifts in your career, if you could give a couple words of wisdom, what would they be?
Be bold and get out of your comfort zone. So, I mean, I think a lot of times we stay where we're comfortable, and I tend to be very anxious on the inside. People tell me they have no idea, but sometimes things very much stress me. I was a little nervous about this. I like to prepare and I like to know what I'm doing and I like to do things that I'm familiar with, but get out of that comfort zone. Try something. And what I've found is when I try something and when others try something too, because I mean, I'm working with a lot of faculty and students and colleagues across the country. Try it. See if you like it. It usually goes way better than you imagine. So just try things, run for office. If you get elected, great. If you don't, then a lot of people know your name and maybe they've got something else in mind for you. Same thing for positions, even in a healthcare system. There's various positions that come available across the healthcare system. Put in an application. I mean, you get your name kind of out there. And then sometimes interviews and post interviews, you get feedback. They'll tell you like, we thought you were amazing, but we're looking for this, or this is something you might consider. So take that. I would say that's the next thing. Take these opportunities to get feedback and to get, have others kind of speak to your strengths and maybe even weaknesses and what some things you could work on. So those are just a couple things I can think of off the bat.
Oh, those are great. And I think the other thing is, and you alluded to this, it's really important to know what your purpose is. Why do I get up every morning, put my feet on the ground and go do what I do? I think sometimes in the absence of knowing your purpose can create a lot of uncertainty, which could lead to anxiety. I don't think you wake up knowing your purpose, but there are a lot of really good little exercises you can do to help identify or help learn what your purpose is. So that's another takeaway that I think I want to share with the shifties is start to think about your purpose and your passion. You mentioned passion. I know what I'm passionate about. I want to make a difference in the lives that I touch, and it could be anybody's lives. But as nurses, we have that great opportunity to do that every single day. And that's why I love this profession.
Absolutely.
So, Regena, it was so great. I'm so glad you officially are a shifty. I'd like to get you a hat. So the next time you come on, you're going to wear a shifty hat. And
Okay.
we're going to do it. We're going to continue to spread the word about this incredible profession that we call nursing. And for those of you listening, remember, shifties, your shift makes the difference. Enjoying the shift? Help us reach more nurse leaders by rating and reviewing us on your podcast app. It takes just a minute, but makes a big impact. Search for The Shift, tap those stars, and share what you love. Your feedback shapes our future episodes and helps others discover us. Remember, rate, review, and amplify The Shift today.